Hi, everyone. I can see you all coming in there now. You're all so welcome. My name is Francesca Fitzpatrick, and I work in the Thrive Wellbeing Hub. And we are really happy to be here today for the first of our 2022 webinars around wellness. And we're even more happy to be joined today by Fiona Brennan for the positive habit light up your 2022. And we're really, really glad that you can all join us and be here. This next hour or so is a real opportunity to relax as well as enjoy the content. I do encourage you to have a pen and paper nearby if you want to take some notes or whatever way you like to do that. We also are going to have, a little bit of interaction in the chat box throughout, and I know that Fiona has some polls as well that she'll be inviting people to take part in throughout the session. And as well as that, there's in the Q&A box, if I could ask if anybody has any questions, maybe not necessarily related to what's on topic at the time. If there's any questions that people want to raise at the end, what I'll do is I'll keep a track of them, and then at the end of the session, I'll put them to Fiona. We've left a little bit of time there for Q&A as well. So we're really looking forward to this. Fiona comes to us with her background as a clinical hypnotherapist. She's also a two-time best-selling author, The Positive Habit and The Self-Love Habit. She's a contributor on many different forums, be it Today FM or in her various columns, as well as on a regular on Instagram and her own blog as well there. And I'm really confident that over the next hour, we can all take a bit of an opportunity to look at the year ahead. And in particular, I suppose it's even more timely with the recent changes for us, certainly here in Ireland. And really, I suppose, getting some clarity on the move ahead. And I'm really hoping that Fiona can help us with that and take us through it. So you're so welcome, Fiona. We're really, really happy to have you, and enjoy, everybody.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you everybody for being here. It's just lovely to see such beautiful numbers coming into the room. So my job today is to help you to the very best of my ability to create a feeling of calmness, clarity, and compassion for 2022. So with that in mind, we're going to start off by actually slowing down. And this is something that I recommend you do before anything important in your life. Whether you're going to give a presentation, like I am right now, whether you're meeting your mother in law and you're feeling a bit anxious, whether you're coping with the restrictions being removed and maybe there's a sense of overwhelm, whatever it is that you're doing, we want to slow down before we begin. And this next hour is a real, just like Francesca said, it is 100% an opportunity for us all to really connect in because we spend so much of our lives in the external world, being busy, responsibilities, to-do lists. And we want to really pause and stop and actually connect with how are you today? What's going on inside? So, working with me, I want everybody who's here to just simply just close down the eyes, just for a moment before we commence. And I want you to just scan through your body right now and just notice what's going on without any judgment. We're going to take 3 really full and deep breaths, and we're going to take them as deep as we can right into the belly. So when you're ready, inhale through the nose right into the belly. Reach to the top and then a nice long exhale through the mouth. For 2, when you're ready, right in again. Slow and long exhale. And our third deep breath, right in. And slow, long exhale. I invite you to let go of everything that came before this moment and everything that will come after to bring your full self to the next 60 minutes and to really, really engage with the content and with yourself to the very best of your ability so that you can create calmness, clarity, and compassion for yourself and for the coming year. So when you're ready, we will just take a final deep breath and we will flick open the eyes. So there we are. And just taking a moment to notice, perhaps, the difference that just 3 deep breaths can take by connecting in, by slowing down, and taking the time to really bring your full self to the moment. I'm going to tell you a little story about a young boy who was just 12 years of age, and he was living in Scotland in the year of 1848. And he came from a very poor family. And the family at the time, like many other, whether it was Scottish or Irish families, decided to emigrate to the United States of America. So they went over literally penniless with nothing. And this same young boy went on to become one of literally the richest men in the world. On his rise to wealth, the IRS were absolutely intrigued as to how this poor Scottish immigrant was accumulating such wealth. So they did what tax authorities can do, and they brought him in for questioning. And they couldn't find anything. They went through, and I'm sure I'm speaking to the right crowd here in terms of accountants. They went through every book, every receipt, every piece of paper that they could, and they couldn't find fault with his affairs. But they still weren't happy. They wanted to know more. How could this young guy be earning such wealth? So when they brought him in again, they sat him down and they said, "Can you explain to us, please, how is this happening? You are becoming steadily one of the richest men in the country." And the young man turned to them and he said, "It's really quite simple," he said. And they were all like, "Well, how?" So, "Do you want to know my secret?" And they were all on the edge of the seat saying, "Yes, yes, we want to know." And he said, "Well, as I said, it's simple. I can focus on one thing for more than 5 minutes." And the IRS, all the officials looked around and they were like, "Well, that's it." He said, "Yeah, that's it. Why don't you try it?" So he set a timer and he said, "Let's go, 5 minutes." And you can imagine their minds went everywhere. They went off to what they're going to have for dinner, what was their, happening tomorrow, their children, the deadlines for whatever it was. Their minds were spinning, and they couldn't focus on more than one thing, on one thing for more than 5 minutes. So this is really at the heart. This story is at the heart of what I want to share with you, because maybe you've guessed it, maybe you haven't, but this same individual went on to give 90% of his wealth away in the last 18 years of his life. And if you walk past a library today, you're probably going to see his name on the top of it, and that is Andrew Carnegie. Maybe you guessed that, maybe you didn't. You can let me know in the chat function if anyone did say, "Yeah, I think that story sounds familiar." It was indeed Andrew Carnegie. And he is somebody who actually, he wrote an article called The Gospel of Wealth. And he actually encouraged other wealthy individuals to give away their wealth, their riches, to improve the world. So he was such a philanthropist with his heart was in the right place. And where did all that come from? It came from clarity. It came from calmness. And that is what I want to help you with today. So please do, let's make this as good Scott, says Hugh. I want to make this as interactive. So please do use the chat function. It's there for us to get as much information as we can and to interact with one another. Because I'm sure that, in the Institute, you're all quite often you're working separately, but you have something in common. You have this connection through the Chartered Accountants of Ireland, and it's lovely to have that connection. And I want to bring you all together as much as I can. So with that in mind, if you wouldn't mind, I've got lovely Chris here behind the scenes. He was breaking into song earlier, but I don't think he's going to do that for us now. But Chris, if you wouldn't mind just releasing the first poll there. And we're just going to have, like, to help me, to help you, let's get a feel for where we are. So the first poll that we're releasing is, do you feel optimistic about 2022? So take a moment and just simply vote yes or no, and let's see what's coming in. This is looking good. I've got an optimistic bunch here with me, which is great to see. So roughly 91% of you are saying yes. Okay, that's wonderful. That's lovely. Now, there's no right or wrong answers, but it's just nice to get a feel for where your mindset is right now. Okay, so the next poll then, if you wouldn't mind, Chris, just let's get a feel there, because this is all going to help shape the webinar to the best of our ability. So the next poll then is coming up, and that is the return to office. Do you feel any pressure or anxiety about returning to the office and restrictions being lifted? So then again, we're just getting a feel for where you are right now in terms of, quite often when change happens, and even when it's positive change, it can create a feeling of anxiety or overwhelm. So there's Miriam commenting, after 2020 and 21, it can only get better. I like your optimism. Also, we know that optimisms live longer. There's a lot of research to show that having an optimistic mindset actually does help with longevity. So the results coming in there are lovely to see. So 64% of us are saying yes, we do feel pressure. And okay, so 65% are saying yes, I feel pressure. You can share that result if you want, Chris. And then no is 35%. Okay, so let's go to, there's 4 in total. So we'll go to the next poll and let's see what comes up for that. So are you clear on your goals? Okay, so who here feels that they're clear on the goals that they want to achieve for 2022? So the results are coming in. I feel like I'm on Eurovision or something. We're looking here, we're looking at 35% of you are saying yes, you're clear, and 65% are saying no. So look, hopefully after this session, 65% of you are going to feel more clear, and that is what I really want to help you with today. So thanks a million, Chris. Let's go for the 4th and final goal. And just like Francesca said as well, please do keep in mind as I'm going through the content that you could ask questions. I'm going to leave time at the end for questions. So please do feel free to put them in the Q&A box there. And you can actually, I think you can upvote the questions that you feel are most helpful. So this is great to see now. This is one I really want to know the answer to. So it will help guide me and you to the best of our ability. So do you have a regular mindfulness meditation practice? And 28% are saying yes, and 72% are saying no. So look, this is actually lovely, right? In terms of, if I'd asked that question, I think even 2 years ago, before COVID, I would imagine that that would have been actually smaller. It would have been, so we're moving in the right direction in terms of the awareness around mindfulness and our mental health, and taking time to care for our minds in the same way that we do exercise, in the same way that we do our nutrition. We need to really pay attention to what's happening in this space. And you will have noticed, even from that short little meditation I did at the beginning, that really is mindfulness in practice. That's just taking a moment to slow things down and really changes our level of consciousness. It really brings the ability to create presence, which is what we need to perform at our optimum, to get clarity, to get that sense of calmness and compassion that I'm here to help you with today. So if I just show you now, what I want to do is basically look at this idea of what lights you up, okay? And quite often when it comes to goals, we're often really thinking about it in terms of the external goal. For example, maybe somebody here today, and I know there's probably lots of different ages and categories in terms of different stages of your life. But let's just say that there's one of you here today and you have a goal that many of us do, which is, I want to get fitter in 2022. Okay, so this is what I would call an external goal. Okay, it requires commitment, it requires maybe going to the gym, going running, doing yoga, whatever it is that you've chosen as your method to achieve your goal. But what most people forget about is that in order for that to actually be implemented and executed, what we really need is an internal goal first. Because what that does is actually keeps the motivation alive. I'm sure you've heard the statistics that they call it Blue Monday, and it really is the idea that by that date, the third Monday in January, most people who have set up resolutions and come up with ideas of what they want to do have let them go and are actually feeling quite down about it and very, very hard on themselves. And ultimately, part of that is because the internal goal, that sense of motivation of why do I want to get fitter, hasn't been addressed. And we need to always go to the why. The why is what actually really keeps and sustains motivation. It's what, on a very neurochemical basis, allows us to release dopamine. And dopamine is not just, you've probably heard that it is a neurochemical for reward, but it is also the neurochemical of motivation. And that's why we need to create it in order to sustain goals. So let's say this person, this, hypothetical person says, okay, I'm going to get fit. What's happened is maybe the first week they went to the gym like literally 4 or 5 times. The next week they went 3 times. And then the third week they went once. So their motivation is starting to go down. Ultimately, if that same individual can look at why am I, what is the purpose of me getting fit? Well, when you keep that in mind, for example, maybe you're somebody in your midlife and you're saying to yourself, I want to be there to have the energy to play with my grandchildren when I'm older. All of a sudden, right, this idea of pressure of going to the gym has taken on something much more momentous. It's taken on a vision of actually being there, playing with your grandchildren. And that is actually what will really push a person forward and say, that's what I want. My health literally is my wealth. And so, what I want to help you with today is to take a moment, and you can share in the chat. There's a few chats coming in here. I'm going to read. This is a question maybe that I could come to later about yoga and meditation. That's a great question, Karen. So, thank you for that. But in terms of, we can look at that perhaps at the end of the session because it's a really good one. Is this idea of what is your external goal? And have you taken the time to actually look at what's behind it? Because that is what's going to actually give you this to sustain it. It's going to give you the energy to sustain. Because when you think to yourself, okay, I'm a bit tired. I don't want to go to the gym today. I've had a long day. There was, deadlines, there was pressure, there was the client who didn't, X, Y, or Z. You get caught up. You get caught up in the noise of the mind, and you start to sort of identify with the thoughts, and you start to feel more tired and less motivated, and it kind of is this really downward spiral. But if you're very clear on your motivation and your purpose, well, that is the energy that actually says, yeah, I'm going because I have a vision in my mind, and that vision is myself playing with my grandchildren, healthy and well into my 70s, 80s, and maybe beyond. With that in mind, what we know through research is, I don't know if you've heard, you can let me know again in the chat function, just a simple yes or no, but of the blue zones. And the blue zones are 5 areas in the world that have been really solidly researched in terms of longevity. And what is it that creates these pockets, and they're small pockets across the world, of where people live longer. They've got the highest percentage of centenarians per head of population. Let me know. I'd love to know, have people heard of the blue zones? Is it something that you're familiar with? There's a great book, and the researcher behind it is called Dan Buettner, and they came up with 9 different sort of aspects of life, and you can look at those. I'm not going to go through them all today, but it's really interesting in terms of that these people are not just living longer, but they're actually enjoying their lives. Their level of health is high. So, it's one thing to live to be 100, but so Rita, thank you for that. No, I have never heard of the blue zone. So just keep in the chats, yes, no's. It's just really good to get a feel for who's heard of them, who's interested in them, who would like to know what the 9 things are. I can send that on. But one of them, right? I'm going to really focus on. Karen says yes, Brendan says yes. Lovely. Thanks, lads. Um, one of the areas that is really highlighted in terms of in Japan is the island of Okinawa. And this is the term Ikigai. Okay. So Ikigai is actually comes from Japan, the Japanese, and Iki is life and Gai is purpose. So it is the concept, a Japanese concept, meaning a reason for being, a reason to get up in the morning. When we have clarity on our ikigai, on our purpose, our goals start to take care of themselves because we have that deeper connection of why we're doing this. And you can have whys like a general overall why, purpose to your life, but you can also have smaller ones in terms of the context of what you're doing at any particular moment or any particular goal. Why do I want to eat healthier? Why do I want to spend more time with friends? Why do I want to do a good job helping you today? It really is something that you can keep on coming back to. But if you look at this diagram, what you can see is that there are 4 components to Ikigai. And we see that one of them is fine. And this is really in terms of a purpose with your maybe your career, your work. And in Okinawa, people do not retire. The idea of retirement is something that just doesn't exist. So if you're a carpenter at 20, you're a carpenter at 90. The difference is you're not obviously working as hard or as long hours, but the purpose is still there. And I think that's a really interesting point that we have or that we need to focus on in terms of how important it is for us to have a purpose, how it really does motivate us. So people are saying maybe they haven't heard of them. Dee says yes, great concept, thank you. Great, Margaret. So it's a mixture. Some people have and some people haven't. So that's really good to know. So you can see the 4 components there. You can see there's what you love. You can see that there's what the world needs, okay, so that it's serving some purpose. And then it is also what can you be paid for? Because obviously that's important. We need to make a living. And then what are you good at? So what are your strengths? Um, Karen says here, I think a sense of connection and close community plays a huge part. Karen, you are 100% correct. And that is one of the 9 things, in fact, that really comes out strong in the research: belonging and community and friendships. And I think that's something that we've all sort of explored maybe in the last 2 years of how important that is for us, to maintain our close friendships and our close, relationships as much as we can with family and friends. So that is a huge part of it. Absolutely. So that is something that I want to help you with in terms of, if even right now, Francesca was saying, if you have a pen and you have a paper, or you feel that you would like to put it into the chat box, even better, is I just want you to put down, for example, number 1, external goal, and then see if you can right here and now, rather than putting it off till later, but right here, let's make the most of our time together, is to put down what internal goal motivates me for that external goal to actually manifest, for me to execute it. Um, Chris read the book Ikigai. Yes, yeah, it's great, isn't it? It's a lovely little book. And I can share anything that I'm mentioning. I'll make sure to email Francesca the names of these books so that you have them. So, yes, please do take a moment, take a deep breath, connect with yourself, listen to yourself and what's going on inside. Take your external goal, okay, that maybe you have already decided for 2022. Maybe it's just coming to you now. Either way, just writing down one external goal. And now I want you to take a moment and say, well, why? Why is this important? And I want you to notice the difference when you really take the time to examine why. And does it change your levels of motivation? Does it actually encourage you to really start to implement this on a practical level? Does it encourage you to maybe take time to get your diary? And just the way this webinar here was in your diary at a certain time, can you do the same for yourself? Can you put in, for example, meditation or going for a walk? Can you schedule that time for yourself just the way you do for other people, whether it's your children, your family, your friends? Can you do it for yourself? Your work. When you have a work appointment, you don't just not turn up. You're there, you show up. And really, what I want to help you with is showing up for yourself and getting that motivation of why. So let's see, is anybody willing to share an external goal and an internal goal? I would really love to hear it. And if there's any questions again, I will come to them towards the end of the session. Okay. So Krina says here, not sure that Ireland's work culture would align with those aspirations unless self-employed. Yes, well, that's there is you've made a good point there, Krina, in terms of how we, it's what's you're dealing with in an external sense is not always what you have internally, but we still need to have an idea ourselves and then to be able to manage it in terms of whatever the reality of the situation is to the best of our ability. Um, okay. So let's see. We have, thank you, Karen. You're an absolute superstar for coming in there. So pass my FAEs. I'm sure that will mean a lot to everybody here in August. External, internal plan ahead and keep motivated on study. Would you recommend any internal for passing this FAE in August? Yeah, absolutely, Karen. Well, think about what that means to you. Think about what it means to actually pass those exams in terms of what kind of impact is it going to have in your life? Is it actually going to really maybe help you feel more confident? And could that help you in other ways? Because when we do really focus on something and we succeed, it obviously helps to boost our morale and our sense of self-esteem. So there is perhaps an internal ikigai, a reason for you, maybe. Um, Okay, so Margaret says she's reading this book at Christmas. Oh, brilliant. Well, then I'm speaking your language, Margaret. You'll be know exactly what I'm talking about. Um, John says self-compassion and self-empathy help me to grow in compassion and empathy for others. John, that's gorgeous. And I'm going to be talking now very shortly a lot about self-compassion. So thank you for that. And that's a really lovely comment and really opens me up to the next part of where I want to bring you. So in terms of mindfulness, now, what is mindfulness? Well, according to John Kabat-Zinn, mindfulness, and John Kabat-Zinn is known as the father of mindfulness. He has created a program, an 8-week program called MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction, and wrote a huge, beautiful big book called The Full Catastrophe of Living. And it's like that, it's like a brick, but it's fantastic. And the way that he describes it, and I'll just read it here for you, is mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. Okay, so we'll break that down. There's a lot in it. So it's through paying attention on purpose. In order to pay attention on purpose, we need to slow down the thoughts in our minds. Because when the mind is spinning like a washing machine on one of those high cycles, we can't actually see the woods for the trees. There's just too many thoughts. Mindfulness is really a way of living in terms of being present to what's here and what's now. An acronym that I find very, very useful, and I hope you will too, is called WIN, What's Important Now. This in particular for example, studying for exams is very beneficial. And I've helped thousands probably over the years of clients to practice this in terms of, feeling overwhelmed when they've got study, when they've got work, when they're trying to balance even a family on top of that. It can be really, really intense. To break it down, you just simply ask yourself the question, and this is mindfulness, What is important now? What's important now? Win. So it's a lovely little acronym: to win, to succeed. And when I say succeed, I'm really talking about it in a much more spiritual sense, or a much more, not materialistic way, in terms of success is not an external goal, but it is that feeling of really knowing your own worth and knowing that you've done the best regardless of the outcome. So, what's important now in this moment is that we're all here together and that you're taking the time to be here. And I think that's really worth acknowledging, that there's 132 people on this call, which is wonderful. It's just amazing because you have all shown up for yourselves. And that's what's important now. So you can see how that is a really helpful little sort of guide for you that you can bring into each moment of your life, no matter what you're doing. Simplify it. What's important now? So I do thoroughly recommend a mindfulness practice. Mindfulness can be both formal and informal. And I think that's one of the questions that I'm going to get to, is this idea of, do we need uh, you know, a formal practice where we actually practice meditation? I would say that yes, we do, but really the greatest material that we have to practice with is life itself. So the idea of going off into a cave and, for years, and people have done this, um, is sounds, well, maybe it sounds attractive to you, maybe it doesn't. Either way, it's not necessary, because what we want to do is to actually be able to bring mindfulness to our everyday, to the moments where we do feel stressed and overwhelmed, to the moments where we feel maybe irritated or anxious, to the moments where we feel joy and happiness. We want to be able to navigate our lives with calmness, with clarity, and with compassion. So life is our greatest teacher in of itself. And that's why mindfulness is a tool that goes with you. It's something that travels with you no matter where you are. Personally, I do practice, formally, in terms of I meditate every day. I also practice hypnotherapy. I do a lot, but I need to do a lot because of the nature, again, of my work. I need to be extremely present and calm in order to help people to the best of my ability. And then, I would argue that we all need that, but you will know yourself what is right for you in terms of, do you need a more formal structure? And or do you need to bring it into everyday life? I would say that ultimately a mixture, a hybrid, if you like, just like working from home or the office, hybrids are great things because we benefit from both. Um, okay, so Karen says, thanks so much for the goal of passing FAE's great outlook. Oh, I'm delighted, Karen. I'm so happy that that has resonated with you. Okay, so that is just to give a sort of overall, now there's so much in mindfulness, but that just gives, and people who are practicing it will know themselves, so much as well, what I'm talking about and how much more there is to it. What I want to show you is something that is a really good, strong image. And this is, let's say, a life. If you look at the image on your, I don't know if it's your right or left, but let's say the red image, it's on my left. No, it's on my right. Excuse me. It's on my right. And that is a brain that is stressed. So this is a brain, for example, that has not practiced mindfulness. Okay. And what we see here is something that really is so common in terms of when the brain is undergoing chronic stress, the nervous system cannot cope, okay? And it starts to shut down. So we get a more narrow field of awareness. This is something that you probably will have experienced in moments of stress. It could be when you're about to present. It could be when you're going into a meeting, an interview, and everything just seems to get that little bit smaller. Some people have it so bad that it can feel like an outer body experience. And that's where somebody's getting into really strong, high levels of panic or anxiety. However, can be like also like a tap that isn't turned off in terms of stress, that kind of drip, 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 drip. So it doesn't have to be so overwhelming, but it is chronic in the sense that it's continually being leaked. And you can see there that the amygdala, you may have heard that before as well, I'm sure, is what's known as the alarm bell of the brain. When that is activated, it is literally like, when there's an alarm going off, you're trying to sleep and there's a neighbor's alarm is going, it's very, very, it can be really, really hard to feel calm and to feel focused. It's like having that internally, okay, in terms of the impact that it has. And it's really unfortunate. And in my work, I see so many people who are living from this place of chronic stress and anxiety. And really, the neurobiology, as you can see, is that it's actually, it's a very physical thing. It's not just in one's head. It is actually the chemicals, the neurochemicals that are being released are creating this tension. And therefore, a person literally can't think straight. So that you may, we've all had moments where somebody asks a question and your mind goes completely blank and you can't think straight. That's because the brain believes there's a threat. So therefore, this question is really not that important. Whatever that threat is, whatever is causing the amygdala to go into that alarm state, that's what matters. So what happens is our immune system is shut off and we go into, I'm sure again you'll have heard, the fight or flight response. And this is, I always think it's kind of funny, it's the sympathetic nervous system. It's not very sympathetic, or it doesn't feel sympathetic at the time if you're getting the sensations of stress, anxiety, in terms of, it can be dry throat, it can be shaking hands, it can be blushing, sweating. There's so many ways that it manifests physically. We have a weaker control of thoughts, emotions, and actions. So I think it's really helpful. And, in my work, I really notice the difference when you take the time to understand it and know that there's so much science behind it, that it really actually helps you to alleviate the feelings of, that you're not alone and that there is something that's happening and there is something much more importantly that you can do. And thankfully, down to the last 20 years with the onset of MRI scans, we actually have this information. We didn't have this 20 years ago. We didn't know about how plastic the brain was, what were the impacts of meditation and mindfulness and hypnotherapy, for example. What difference did it make? We didn't actually have that science, and now we do, and there is just literally so much research behind it that it is very, very, very reassuring and great to see. So if you look at the picture then on my left, this is the unstressed brain. And what we see here is a very different picture in terms of the prefrontal cortex is open. Okay, so we now have a much more ability to actually control our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. A really good example of this is, like, let's say you're walking down the road, you're on holiday somewhere foreign, and you see a shape that's in a coil, okay, like a snake. Your immediate response, and this is where the threat response is actually very helpful, is you're going to feel fear and you're going to think, oh my God, it's a snake. I'm in Greece or wherever, and this is a snake, and I need to protect myself. What you want to be able to do, right, in that moment is to actually assess it before you run or hit the snake or do something, right? And what often you need to be able to do is actually bring the prefrontal cortex, which is the most modern part of our brain. It's the newest part of our brain. It's the part of our brain that allows us to regulate emotion, to analyze, that does the work that you do in terms of being an accountant. And you can actually take a moment and pause and say, oh, it's actually a coiled rope. It's not a snake. I don't need to go into that stress response. That was unnecessary. And so much of life is actually so much of life is a coiled rope that we're seeing as snakes. So we see threat where it doesn't exist because we have unconsciously and unintentionally trained ourselves to be in that stress response. So for example, an exam could be the snake, but it's not a snake. You can manage this when your mind is clear and calm and you can actually bring up the information that you need. It's all there. It's all within your reserves when you have the space and the calmness to access it. So that's just to give you an idea of why. Why would you practice mindfulness? Well, here we are. There's countless reasons. You can see that very clearly in the example of an exam. But think about it again in terms of your relationships, even on a more personal level, to not be so reactive. Maybe your son comes in and throws the shoes down. I'm not speaking personally at all. And you're like, oh my God, how many times have I asked him, don't put the shoes in the middle of the room? Somebody will trip over. Um, the ability to actually not get into a state of stress over something like that, for example. And we all have these examples in our everyday life. So just letting me know, hopefully that is something that resonates. And again, keep the chat going here. There's another question come in, and I think I will, that's a really good question, Caitlin. So I will get to that. Can mindfulness help with sleep? I will get to that at the end. I'm going to sort of give about 15 minutes at the end to answer questions. So before I do, I want to look at something I have touched on, and that is that the breath is the doorway to calmness, clarity, and compassion. So if we go back up to the previous slide, maybe what's going through your mind, yeah, okay, this all sounds great. Brendan, I like your style. What do you do about the shoes? I breathe, Brendan. I breathe, right? And I just simply move them or say, sweetheart, could you move the shoes? And it doesn't have to be a big drama, okay? That's just a tiny example, but it's those little examples that build up and create exhaustion and create then more stress for when we are actually dealing with challenges that do come our way, in terms of life and events that can be truly stressful, not just a pair of shoes. So in terms of the breath, that's how the breath is the language of the subconscious. It's the language of the body, and it's the language of calmness. So just like I started this webinar, we started off for a reason with those deep breaths, because what it does is it actually is a doorway to calmness, to clarity, and to compassion. It allows the prefrontal cortex to be open for you to feel safe. On a very primitive level, we need to feel safe. And the breath, even though the mind might be going off with all of these thoughts, I'm going to fail, what if this happens, what if that happens, the mind can go in 1,000 directions. But when we follow the breath right down into the belly, and we exhale slowly through the mouth, we feel calm. We're not following the thoughts, we're following the breath. And that's just a really simple way, again, to remember that. Why am I following the thoughts in my mind when what I really need to do is actually work with my body in terms of keeping me feeling safe and feeling calm? So, what I want to share with you now is a technique, and this is one that I learned from a wonderful neuroscientist that I think I'm a little bit obsessed with because I've learned so much from him. His name is Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a Stanford professor, and he has an incredible podcast called the Huberman Lab. And he's a great proponent of hypnotherapy. He's a great proponent of meditation, mindfulness, etc. And he really breaks things down. He goes into huge detail of different protocols that can actually really help us to, in terms of our exercise, in terms of our mind, our body, nutrition, etc. So if anyone's interested in that, again, I can make, a note of that. It is the Huberman Lab podcast. So one of the breathing tools that has a lot of research behind it is called the physiological sigh. And I'm going to teach it to you here today. And this is something I want you to take away with you, a practical tool that you can use when and if you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, getting stressed, getting caught up with X, Y, or Z, or when you're not sure of what direction you want to go in terms of that clarity, what it is that you want for yourself for 2022. You can't answer that question until you've created space and calmness. So what this is, I'll talk you through it first, and then we'll all practice together. So just even imagine everyone, 134 of us here today, actually together, really working to help ourselves to feel calm. That's a lovely image to keep in mind. So what it is you basically take 2 sharp inhales through the nose. Okay, so I'll do it properly in a moment, but just to talk you through it. So 2 sharp inhales through the nose, and then a long exhale out through the mouth. Now, what The science behind that is that when a person is in a stressful state, we tend to do this naturally. We tend to, you might notice, we go, right? So it's kind of like a sigh. So it's a physiological sigh. But what you want to do, and this is mindfulness, this is awareness, is you want to notice, you want to preempt yourself getting into the chronic state of stress so that as soon as you start to notice feelings of overwhelm, tension within the body, is that you actually practice that and implement it first. So it's really the idea that prevention is always better than cure. So let's do that together. Wherever you are, I want you to just make yourself as comfortable as you can, have a nice straight spine. Okay, so feel the shoulders back, maybe a few rolls around. You've probably been on the computer all day, you've probably been sitting all day, and you just need to really allow yourself to actually notice what's going on inside and really release any tension that's there. Feel your 2 feet on the ground, and let's just practice this together. So we're going to breathe in twice as quickly as you can through the nose. So we're going to do it 2 more times. So in through the nose, 2 sharp inhales, long exhale. Third time. Now we're floating. Honestly, I feel it myself, like it's so helpful. You can do that wherever you are. People don't even notice that you're doing it. You know, you just you're in a meeting and you want to take a moment. It doesn't have to be so dramatic as I just did it. You can do it before you go into the meeting, go into the bathroom and do it. You can do it just before your kids come home and you're feeling overwhelmed. You can do it wherever you are, but it will actually literally help you to feel that bit calmer. And from that calmness comes clarity. Look at the time, and I promised Francesca I wouldn't go on too much. So I want to just wrap up. I'll actually look at compassion. So I'm going to move on to the idea of compassion-based resilience. And there was a comment there earlier that was touching on this. And in terms of actually achieving goals, most of us have been trained and conditioned over the years to apply pressure to ourselves. And that if we don't apply the pressure, we're not going to get it. I mean, that's kind of the simple conditioning that we all have, going back to school, going back to anything really that we've achieved in our lives. There's a sense of you have to put pressure or it won't happen. Now, the truth is people do achieve quite a lot with pressure, but for how long? Because in my work, I see people who are incredibly successful, probably at the height of their success, and yet they are close to burnout. So pressure can only get you so far, because what happens is the body starts to give in. It can't take it. It's just too much. So what we want to do in really simple terms is actually replace pressure with compassion. And this takes courage because, again, it goes kind of against our instinct in terms of, I want to go to the gym, so I have to go to the gym, I have to do it. And we put this pressure on ourselves. When we don't do it, we're hard on ourselves. And the harder we are, the more that then creates the unwanted behavior. When you have a kindness towards yourself, when, for example, you acknowledge the times you did go to the gym, the times that you did study, the times that you did not get annoyed when your son threw his shoes on the floor, the times that you actually acknowledge that you are behaving in the way and executing the habits that you want to, that's when you actually acknowledge and are kind to yourself in the same way that you would to anybody else. With that in mind, I want you to just take a moment and I want you to think of 3, or even let's just say 1 for now because of the time constraints. Let's just think of 1 quality that you admire in a friend, that you would sort of look for in a friend. I want you to just think about 1 thing that you say, yeah, I love that friend because they're loyal, they're honest. And let's just put it into the chat function and see what comes up. Okay. So there's some lovely comments coming there about the breath. I'm delighted to see. So loyalty, fun, says Karina. Kindness, says Colette. Okay, keep them coming in. Hugh, honesty, like it. That's important. My sister is extremely positive. Oh, that's lovely, Karen. Listening, lovely, Grace. Friendliness, yeah. Fairness, integrity. These are wonderful words, aren't they? Shared values, says Liam. Lovely. Great. They're all flying in. Confident and optimistic. Gorgeous, Danielle. Okay, non-judgmental, Paul. Yeah, that's back to what we were saying earlier in terms of mindfulness and John Kabat-Zinn. Supportive, says Chris. Gorgeous. Okay, so just notice, right, how easy it is for you maybe to identify that in what you admire in a friend. And what I want you to do is I want you to take that word, whatever word it is, and I want you to apply it to yourself. So can I be non-judgmental towards myself? Can I be patient with myself? Can I be supportive with myself? Can I be confident and optimistic towards myself? Can I have integrity for myself? Can I be fair to myself? Can I be friendly to myself? And just notice that we don't take the time to do that. We don't take the time to realize that we deserve those qualities as much as our friends do, and as much as we give them out into the world. That we need first and foremost is self compassion first. And this quote from the Dalai Lama, I think, is one that really resonates in terms of love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. So, self compassion first. Self compassion first for you to get the clarity that you need for the year coming ahead. Calmness. The calmness is the doorway, the breath is the doorway. And that then gives you compassion, the space to notice, what is the voice in my head? Is it being kind, or is it actually being judgmental? And if it's being judgmental, why am I listening? Why would I? If it was somebody else speaking to me like that, I wouldn't hang around and listen. So, really learning to cultivate an internal voice that is a friend and is kind to you. So I'm going to wrap up there with some final words from the beautiful poet Rumi. And you can actually, even if you're happy to do so, just close your eyes and let this sink in. A little mini meditation. So take a full deep breath. If you're happy to close your eyes, that would be lovely. And just listen to these words. You were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You are not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings. Learn to use them and fly. And that is the poet Rumi. So thank you so much, everyone. I feel honored and delighted to be here, to be asked to give this webinar, the first of 2022. I'm genuinely honored, and thank you to Francesca. So Francesca, if you want to just let me know, I'm really proud. I've got 6 minutes or so for questions. So just let me know the questions are, and I'll be happy to do my best to answer them.
Great. Thank you so much, Fiona, for all of that. It was really, really refreshing, as a participant, and really hope that everybody on the call kind of felt that as well. It was really, really wonderful. So many takeaways. Oh my goodness, I was scribbling down here all the, what's important now, and the from calmness comes clarity, and all those different elements that you shared with us. So thank you so, so much. Like really, really helpful. I suppose first and foremost, I just want to say as well, obviously for anyone on the call that this has really resonated with, before we jump into the questions and just to give it a bit of time, we obviously have in Thrive, in the Wellbeing Hub, we have lots of supports there in terms of access into ourselves. Or if anybody feels like there's anything that's come up for them for today, or they would like to speak to us more, we have access to the likes of the counselling services, our wellness coaching, and our listening service as well. And obviously we can be contacted thrive at charteredaccountants.ie, and also through the website as well. On the charteredaccountants.ie website, you'll see us there at /Thrive Wellbeing Hub and on the landing page. So just wanted to get that in as well before we jump in. And obviously, Fiona, I'll get you as well to share your details, because I saw somebody just asking there as well about do you have a podcast? And you do have
No,
a podcast.
well,
You have
not yet, but what
or
I
a
do
blog.
have.
Sorry, a weekly
Yeah,
blog,
I have
isn't
a
it? Yeah.
newsletter that goes out every Monday. You can get that on thepositivehabit.com. You can subscribe to it. And then I'm also on Instagram, and I do a live most Wednesday evenings, which is called Therapy on the Couch. So you can follow me on Instagram. That's my way of, I suppose, really giving back and actually doing my best to help the public at large, if you like. So you're really welcome to follow me there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And we'll jump into questions. So we had that first one that came through about the how often do you recommend like a yoga or meditation practice, with obviously life being busy between work and study for some people on the call. They were just wondering how often you recommend that.
Well, to be honest, I think we need time for ourselves every single day. And only today, actually, something really interesting, a client told me that if you do one thing for 20 minutes every day, it adds up to a year of your life. So imagine a year of your
Mm.
life. Imagine you're scrolling Instagram, or you're watching something, or you're complaining, or you're doing something for 20 minutes. That could add up to a year of your life on the negative. But if you turn that to the positive and you say, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening doing meditation, for example, or doing yoga. And yoga is actually meditation in movement. I practice a lot of yoga, and I find that it is incredibly beneficial. So I think that we need to take, and when I say, like, it's not making the time, it's taking the time. Again, I've heard so many people over the years say, oh, but Fiona, that's all very well, but I just don't have the time. You don't understand. I've got X, Y, and Z. And that's true. There is so many different responsibilities depending on where you are. No one's going to give you the time. You have to take it. So if we can take 20 minutes, thank you, Liam, 20 minutes to every day for ourselves, then that's a good sort of benchmark, I would say. And consistency again is really important. But for example, let's say you do that for a week, and you don't one day you don't do it. That's where the compassion comes in. Doesn't matter. You pick yourself up and you keep going, because the all or nothing thing is what happens to so many people. Is that, well, I did try it. I tried meditation, didn't work for me. No, that's not the case at all. It's actually going back to it, even when you haven't been there for a while. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that you keep showing up, and picking yourself up again. So yeah, that would be roughly what I would say. And like I said during the webinar, is like actually getting your diary, and putting it in like as a priority. So you've written it down. It's not just this, maybe I'll go, it's actually like a SMART goal, if you like. You're actually committing to it. So that's what I would say there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. So really taking the time and taking
Yes.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
And then there was a question around the mindfulness for sleep. Can it help?
100%. And I'm sorry, I'm just putting in my handle there for people that might be helpful.
Oh, thanks, Fiona.
Yeah. And the website is thepositivehabit.com. Yeah, there. Thank you so much, Chris, who's probably singing there in the background now. He's so lit up. We had great fun, Francesca, didn't we? Yeah.
We did.
So okay, the sleep is paramount. Like, there's 6 pillars in lifestyle medicine, and sleep, I would say, is pillar number 1, because you can't really do anything until your sleep is in a good place. So does mindfulness help with sleep? 100,000 times yes. Because what is going to sleep? Going to sleep is letting go, isn't it? It's like you just relinquish control. And that's what we're doing every night. We're just letting go. And I find really helpful as well is to replace this sort of, because a lot of people feel sleep anxiety and stress around it, is actually take away the idea of I have to get to sleep. Just say, do you know what? I'm going to rest now. And once you take away this pressure of going to sleep and you just simply say, I'm resting, well, then it changes, the whole sort of pressure component, and you're going to rest for 8 hours. So yes, it does help. Yeah.
Really changing up the self-dialogue there around it. Yeah, that sounds
yeah,
really,
exactly.
really
yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that we're going to have to call it, although there are some other questions, but it's just been really brilliant to have you, Fiona. And thank you all so much for showing up in your big numbers as well, and really feeling the community and the sense of community there in the chat box today as well, which
There's
has been
lovely
really great.
messages.
So yeah, and really lovely messages of thanks coming through there as well for you, to you, Fiona. So thank you so much for all of that, and take care, everybody, into the new year and with setting your goals going forward. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thanks everybody. Thanks for being here. Lots of love.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.